Hi, everyone. We're here today to talk about stories and the power that they have on us sharing our stories and the power it is to listen to other people's stories. I'm Carol C.C. Miller, your positivity trainer, peace activator, and global hugger, coming to you today for a wonderful conversation. It's always fun to talk to Tina. I met her, well, actually, we've never physically met in person, but we've known each other for several years via Facebook, and we're associated with a conference together. And she's shared her stories here before, and I'm sure we're going to talk some more about them. But really, when you ask yourself about stories, and when we hear other people's stories, you get to learn a little bit more about that person if you listen without judgment and just kind of listen to their heart as they share their story and how you share your own story. Welcome, Tina. It's so good to have you back. It's been a while.
It's been a while, and it's so good to be back. I've missed you.
Me too. Been busy traveling, so it's good to have you back. You're coming in from the Bahamas, and I'm here in Chicago. So for those listening in, please share where you're joining us from. And after the show is over, I will come. You know me, I'm a big hugger, so I will share a virtual hug with everyone. And if you have questions throughout or comments about what Tina and I are talking about today, we love having you part of the conversation. So I will try to watch the comments as well as Tina will. So just ask your questions there and we'll go from there. So Tina, you were telling me some really powerful stories recently just when we talked about coming up with this show. What does stories mean to you?
Yeah, well, I have to say that I, as a child, we grew up in a house full of storytellers. I've always been intrigued by people and life and how people experience, difficulties or adversity, and what is it that makes them come through that? What is it that helps you to grow and be courageous? And so I'd have to say, as a child, it was just always something that, whenever I met someone, I wanted to know who they were, what their story was. But I'd say that more recently, in the last 10 years, I've started to see how powerful stories are for healing, for teaching, for helping me on my own journey to discover what was possible. And after losing my child, Mia, 11 years ago, my journey led me to Rwanda, where I became witness to many, many powerful stories of genocide and reconciliation. And from there, I realized that those stories could change lives. Those stories, if I brought those stories back to the Bahamas and I shared them in our schools, with our youth, with our community, I was curious to know what could happen. What are the possibilities? And so as I began sharing their stories, I started to see the shifts. I started to see the changes. And I started to realize, you know what? It's so important as people that we connect. We connect with life. And how do we connect with people? Through story. And so...
And what I really like about that too is the fact that you do learn about different people, and it's so easy to make a blanket judgment on a situation that you don't know. But when you learn the background story of why that event happened or whatever, it certainly adds more compassion. I'm curious, though, as you're talking about the stories, for me, like the whole point is to heighten celebrations and lessen sorrows. And that's what we do this show for, and we've talked about the fact that we want to have some difficult conversations and bring a little bit more love and compassion on the table to it. I'm just curious, as far as I have found, most people want to help. The vast majority of people that I know want to help, but sometimes you can get so overwhelmed in hearing the big stories that are going on in the world right now that rather than doing a small thing to make an impact, you do nothing because it feels too overwhelming. And we were talking yesterday about some stories, and one of them you share with me. Whether we share it today or not, we'll see. But it just had such that impact to me of, is it going to inspire people or is it going to bring people into a bigger fear space? So what is some tips that you give for people on ways to even listen to other stories, especially ones that are, could be very not in alignment with who you are?
Sure. That's a great question, actually. I think it's vitally important that when we listen to a story, First of all, that we open our hearts to that story. We open our mind to the possibilities. And what I mean by the possibilities, what are the lessons? What is it that we can take from the story? So yes, I can share a story about someone who's starving, some family that's going through tremendous adversity, and I can share some of the experiences that they've had. And you can either look at that and it can break your heart and you can say, life is terrible and this is I can't take this, and everybody's hurting and that's why life is so difficult. Sure, you can do that. Or you can take it into your heart and let that stir and let the magic happen, and then you can move to action and say, okay, what am I going to do today that perhaps I can't help that person, but what am I going to do one step today that's going to help someone? And that's what I've learned from my experiences, is that I can't save everyone, I can't help everyone, but I can most certainly do justice to that story. I can most certainly honor that person, the storyteller, by sharing that story, bringing about awareness, helping people to get that little nugget, that gem, that special blessing, that gift that comes from that story. And when I know that I've shared a story that's touched a life, that's perhaps made someone think differently about life, then I know that I've done something good today, and stories can change people. They change lives every day.
I think absolutely, and I think one of the things that, as far as them changing people, even you said with your own story with Mia, that you really needed to hear other stories of how people went through a tragic situation and came out on the other side, because we certainly can. I think it tends to happen more when something is not going well. And by the way, I live 3 blocks from a hospital, so there's an ambulance going by my window right now. This is life. But I think it's so easy when we're going through our own tragic or contrast, there's a variety of different hardships that we face in life, that it can feel very isolating, and that maybe we're the only ones going through it, so we don't want to share that story. But when you do hear, I am always amazed at how different people like yourself, or anyone who has gone through something really challenging, and how not only did they get through it, but they found a way to thrive again and to really live life. It's certainly in a different space than it was before that tragedy occurred, but it is still possible to find the preciousness of life again.
Yeah, as you were speaking, I was just thinking about, stories give hope. You think about that. It's if you've gone through something traumatic, something painful, something, loss. Let's take loss. Everybody is going to at some point experience that, and when you go through it, you don't know how you're going to get through it. You've never experienced it before, perhaps, and if someone else has walked that path and can say to you, I've lost a child, I've lost my husband, I've lost my friend, I've been there, and you can survive, you can heal, you can feel whole again, you will smile again. It gives you hope, and it makes you feel, first of all, that you're not alone, like you said, but it also makes you realize, okay, there's a way through this. And further to that, as you listen to more and more stories, you learn. You learn, what is it that they did, and can I do this? And then you begin to implement new principles for living, perhaps, or you start to implement new ways of thinking that perhaps you'd never thought of before. And that's why, to me, stories are vital. They're as vital as food and water. We need stories. Without them, who would we be? Where would we be? They ground us.
Yeah, we have Beverly joining us, and I believe she's joined us before. And I
Hi,
think,
Beverly.
Beverly, if I'm getting you mixed up with somebody else, I apologize. But I believe you shared before that you've lost a child. And so what Tina was saying, I absolutely agree. Like when you have that shared experience, and it's a different share, like your loss of a child compared to somebody else's loss, it is different, but there is still that connection that allows you to have more compassion and empathy. Like I can give you compassion and I can feel the loss, but because I've never personally lost a child, I can't experience it the same way for you as when you find people who have gone through that experience too, to give you hope.
You know, and Beverly, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for your loss. And, you know, what I want to say is, you know, we've talked about this before, Carol, but like you said, nobody knows. No one knows. It's different for everyone. And even, you know, when I went to Rwanda and I suddenly found myself in the midst of women who not only lost one child, but they had lost all their children to horrific acts of violence that I can't even bear to imagine. But something very powerful for us was as we sat in a circle together, one by one, each person shared their story. And every time we express, that's healing. That's doing something for us. We're getting it out. But as I listened and as we were all, as women, witness to each other's story, we're validating what it is they're going through. We're helping them to know they're not alone. We're standing with you. But what I want to say is that at the end, you know, it was my turn to speak. And I didn't really, I don't know why, it was about a year, maybe a year or two after my daughter had died. But for me, I didn't feel that I had a place to share, or that it, you know, I thought my loss was somehow a lot less because, you know, the way that my daughter died, you know, I'd like to think that maybe it was quick. She didn't, you know, I don't know. It just, but to know that these amazing women watched their daughters being raped before then being murdered in front of them. I said, I can't share. It's, you know, my story is nothing compared to what you've been through. And at the time we were making jewelry, and she said, just like this necklace has all of these beads, they're all different, but they're all necessary for the whole. She said, all of our stories are necessary. We cannot all speak and share our stories, but not acknowledge yours. You lost, you felt, you experienced, and the pain for you is just as deep and as painful as it is for us. And so that was, for me, that was healing. It gave me a space in the circle, and it helped me to know I'm not alone. And no matter what our pain, there's always someone out there who understands, someone that can relate to me, someone I can relate to.
Well, and it's such a beautiful story because it is a different experience that you had. And obviously, I've not lost a child, so any of my challenges, it has helped me when I'm going through a challenge of some sort to know, I mean, like I don't wish those horrible stories on somebody else, but to know other people have had either harder or the same or whatever and have come through it, it gives me strength to know it's like, okay, you know, I've got it in me to move through this process. I am curious though, because I mean, you and I both agree on that we believe life is about choices, and not all choices are easy, but it is a choice. I do know people that still stay, I'm going to use the word stuck. It's probably not the appropriate one. Stuck in their traumatic story rather than growing through it. So I don't know if, I do know that the research has shown that we're born, some people are born with more of a positive outlook than other people, that's just a genetic makeup that we go through. Obviously, everybody can learn ways to be happier, but there is a genetic start point. I'm just curious. I don't know if those people are born with less of it or what makes them stay stuck in their story. And maybe it takes their story 20 years before they get to the other side and can see life is worth living again.
Yeah, surely I would believe that, you know, it's got much to do with your upbringing, your history. It's got to do with, if you believe in past lives, then perhaps you think it's a past life, something that you're carrying into the next life, if that's your belief. You know, there's obviously so many factors. And it's easy to get stuck and it's easy to get unstuck. Sometimes it happens when you least expect it. Sometimes we get into habits. You know, we play the same story over and over and over in our minds. But if we are able to each and every day, and I've learned this because I've been one that has gotten stuck.